Welcome back to Small Lathe. There are several problems I want to solve and several parts for this unimat I want to make. Now the current problem is as you see before you. And what you see is basically 3 high-speed steel starter drill bits, countersink drill bits, and 3 carbide ones. And we have 2 edge finders. Now it's not obvious for somebody who does not have unimat, but as you use the unimat as a lathe, the problem presents itself. As you can see, these are fairly long, and let me get a ruler over here. These are roughly 9 centimeters long, and this is 8.5 centimeters long. It doesn't seem too bad, right? Because the quill can move this distance. Well, the quill in normal machines can. In the unimat, it has this much travel. I know, it's ridiculous. It can move only 15 millimeters up and down. And that's it. So, let's take this one for example. Let's say I'm measuring the edge over here. I've measured it, and I'm drilling a centered hole, right? Seemingly simple, right? We just measured it with an item that's this long. Let's shift these aside and do that. So if the quill is here, and you know what? Let me get a sheet of paper and I'll draw it out. Right. So I have a sheet of paper, and let's say I've measured this object. Now I know where the edge is, right? Fine, easy. Now what do I need to do? What I need to do is I need to move up, move over to above the object, and I want to drill a hole straight through. Let's say it's a middle hole, alright? For simplicity's sake. So that's fairly easy, right? Next thing you do is you take a starter drill bit, and my chuck is here. This is my chuck. I take a starter drill bit, but now my quill can move exactly 1 centimeter. Ignore that one. It can move 1 centimeter. It can reach. I can reach with a bit all the way down here, and that's even a bit too much, like so. So how do I drill? Now the unimat shaft, and I'll show you the shaft. So the unimat milling shaft is this thing. This is the main Z-axis movement. So we can release a locking screw over here and shift this entire thing up and down. But as you do that, you're going to lose your concentricity because it's going to shift sideways. Don't believe me? Wait a second. So if you have a milling attachment and you're trying to mill and you're losing concentricity, you have to find the edge again, right? But now I'm low enough to drill a hole, but not high enough to center my piece. So I'm having serious problems finding centers, which is fairly simple, even on a tube or a rod, a round one. So, how do we solve the problem? The answer is obviously an edge finder. I'm sorry to say I couldn't find an edge finder that is small enough that I can afford. Affording the small ones are extremely expensive. So what I chose to do is this thing. I've taken this edge finder apart, and this is the sensitive part. This is the part that measures, and this is the part that is being held in the chuck. Now these two are held by a spring. If you haven't taken one of those apart, springs fly really well. So be careful when you open these. So you have the spring on one side, very oily here, stuck on this, and it's pulled down to this locking pin. So it's held quite tightly, as you can see. Well, what can I do? Answer is fairly simple. I can't do any trimming over here. I can't do any trimming over here because this is a ground surface. This is a machine ground surface, or at least it's supposed to be. And I can't do anything over here, but I can cut this. Now, the chuck I'm using can hold up to 10 millimeters of material. That's the depth of this size material. I can run through the entire shaft a 6 millimeter rod, but not this thick. It's roughly 8 to 9 millimeters. I'm guessing 9. And I'm not really interested in the diameter. So if you really want to, I'll email me and I'll give you the right dimensions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this axis. I have 3.5 centimeters here I do not need, nor do I want. Now if I do trim these, what happens is that I save a lot of room. Now I can use one of these, which is longer. Now this is not ideal, because in an ideal world you hold these bits as close to the tip as possible because you want rigidity. But this is not ideal. This is not really an ideal milling machine, talking about milling. But since this is what I have right now, that's what I'm about to do. Now if I hold this, I can now move 1 centimeter down and hit the base and mark my point. I can then take a longer drill bit and actually drill through. So that's an acceptable, hopefully useful sort of thing. Now in this video I won't be testing this idea, is because when you convert the lathe from a lathe to a mill and then back, you go through an hour and a half of fumbling basically, because you have to zero or center the lathe again. And remember, the head is swiveling. So let's get started. Let's do something except for talking. Okay? I'll clean up here and I'll see you in a minute. So use the hacksaw, nothing really fancy, to cut this. This is mild steel of some sort. Let's take that one, and I'll just face it off and try to reassemble it. So, how do you get that assembled? Well, I'll drive this pin out. There we go. I'll put it back in right where aligned. And just push it back. There we go. The spring is locked. Now we have a small problem. Our initial unit was this, and it had to be stretched all the way up to here, about a centimeter's worth. Now we're way too short. So what I have to do is shorten it considerably. Not perfect, not that bad. Now, so what we have to do is just, let me get that greased up. If you've seen this, raise your hand. Alright. Let me get that royally greased up. Right. Wire. Let's get that through there. I'll secure this on my vise and then we can pull. Now we can pull. There's that thing. pull that away. And we'll just click it into place. There we go. Actually, I could have trimmed more. I forgot about the button. That's fine. I'm very pleased with that. So that's sitting nicely. And let's get that cleaned up. Now, this thing cost me something like, I think it was something like $5, a bit more maybe. So it's definitely sacrificial. I don't mind sacrificing it for this cause. And if it works, I'm going to be extremely pleased. So this chapter discussing how to get an edge finder some 3.5 centimeters shorter. Well, we got it. It's shorter. Question is, will it work? Well, answer is, we're going to find out, aren't we? Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.